Okay, so we left off introducing the overall context of the short story, especially the genre and the important subgenre of satire. So let's move on to the story itself now, and we'll get into a close reading of different aspects of the text. So these readings that I'm doing in my videos will explore deeper things textually than you might get in the companion questions or the other videos that I put as supplementary material to the story. But they can go hand in hand, so let's just take a look together at doing a close reading through the actual text itself, and I'll be pointing out some key concepts. At the end, we want to look at developing a theme statement, and as we go here, one of the main things I'm pointing out for this particular text is to think about the relationship between the form and the content. So again, form is how the author communicates, like word choice, genre, diction, elements of fiction. And then the content is the what they say, the message. So a couple things that we'll point out as we go along with those aspects. Keep that in mind as we go. All right, Harrison Bergeron, Kurt Vonnegut Jr. The year was 2081, and everybody was finally equal. They weren't only equal before God and the law, they were equal every which way. Nobody was smarter than anybody else, nobody was better looking than anybody else, nobody was stronger or quicker than anybody else. All this equality was due to the 211th, 212th, and 213th amendments to the Constitution, and to the unceasing vigilance of agents of the United States handicapper. Okay, lots of stuff to unpack in the introductory paragraph here. So going back to your terms and definitions, remember the introduction part of a text is called the exposition. Okay, it's not only the opening paragraph necessarily, but in this case, obviously the opening paragraph is going to be part of the exposition. So when we're thinking about plot as one of our elements, okay, we want to kind of look at it almost like a triangle kind of shape like this. And generally we will call that there are 5 sections. Oops, needs to be a number 4. To any given story. Okay, so we would call the intro the exposition. And again, this should be review for many of you. Then rising action, as the action kind of goes up. The high point of the story is the climax. Then you have falling action. And then finally the conclusion, which we call the resolution. So in the exposition, we'll get our setting. We might get some background. We'll be introduced to a problem or issue of some sort. And then usually also we'll get characters in the exposition as well. And they're kind of in a status quo situation, which is going to need to change. So where are we? Well, we're in the year 2081. So that's future for us still, but it was even more future at the time that this was written in the 1960s. Okay, so over 100 years in the future, according to the original context of Vonnegut. So setting is going to give us time and place. And I want to note something interesting about the place when we get there. So everyone was finally equal. They weren't only equal before God and the law, they were equal every which way. Every which way. So what kind of equality? Absolute equality is in view here. Total equality. Nobody was smarter than anyone else. So how? Intelligence is the first one. Nobody was better looking than anybody else. Beauty is the second mark of total equality. Nobody was stronger or quicker than anybody else. Okay, and the third one is physical strength, as we mentioned in the intro video before. All this equality was due to the 211th, 212th, and 213th amendments to the Constitution. All right, well, what's that? Going to be some important information there that we need to know. Well, Constitution is referring to the American Constitution. Got a different color here. So the Constitution of the United States. Constitution, sure, sorry. Of what? The USA. And that's the document that gives the kind of fabric of the government's setup legally. So the rights and freedoms and the principles on which that whole system of government and society is built. The Constitution is the framing document for the whole country and its existence, its political and moral philosophy. Now, it's telling us that there have been over 200, almost 215 amendments to that Constitution. So we can get amendments legally to the Constitution. We do have them. For example, I'm not liking my colors here, not bright enough. For example, the Fourth Amendment is the right to bear arms. That means to have guns. So it's a legal right. You're allowed to own firearms and guns. Now, that was a change. So amendment equals a change to the original document. So 76, I want to say. You have the founding of the United States of America. They broke off from Britain. They had the War of Independence, and they became their own nation, their own sovereign country. And so they developed their constitution to define the setup of that country. But there can be some changes. That's a really old document, right? So legally things might change. For example, issues with slavery and the Civil War and so on. Now, as of today, there are 27 amendments. And it's extremely difficult to pass an amendment because it involves rewriting the core foundational document that defines the identity morally and politically and philosophically of the country. And so it's a huge process. So we've got, 250 years, say, and we've only got 27 so far. So it's an extremely difficult thing to amend the Constitution. It has to go through so many different processes in the Senate, and Congress has to approve it, and so on. You got to draft the bill, you got to debate it, you got to vote on it. The citizens may petition against it, and so on. So what is it telling us about the society that the story takes place in? The fact that they have over 200 already in just a short kind of 120-year period. That's like 2 amendments per year almost. When previous you had 250 years with only 27 amendments. Something is fundamentally wrong with the society. It means that they're not taking the Constitution seriously. Okay, they are lightly holding the Constitution. Just change it however they feel like it. Now notice also, what was this all due to? How did this come about? Okay, because they changed the Constitution so much, and remember, if you think about America, if you think about what they stand for, the United States of America, right? What do they stand for? Words like freedom come to mind, democracy. Those are like core values. Individual rights, freedoms, the American dream, the ability to succeed and work hard and earn income and own land, property rights, things like that. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to gather in social groups, like freedom of religion. Those are all core values that are associated with America, with the United States. Because it began actually originally when the Puritans left England. They were a persecuted group. Within the Church of England, they were a subset of the Church of England that wanted to reform the Church of England and didn't want to submit to the state church telling them they had to practice their religion in certain ways. And so they debated it out, and many of them got kicked out of the churches. And so they left, and they went to the colonies in North America to start fresh and start a new society there where they could practice religious freedom. So not just the War of Independence, but the initial founding of the colonies in North America are all centered on this key idea of freedom. However, they've now amended the Constitution so much, and how do they enforce it? So legal amendment, right? They have the legal aspect, but then they have the enforcement, and due to the unceasing vigilance of agents of the United States Handicapper General. So very quickly, agents like FBI agents, United States, it does not say of America anymore. Just United States. Could be United States of the world, for all we know. Handicapper means to give a disadvantage. And look at the title, Handicapper General. It's kind of like, the FBI or something. So this is a government organization to oppress and make people do what they want.